For a long time, Battle of Akerabat was top secret. In September 2017, sensational news hit Russian and world media. Syrian army with support of Russian Aerospace Forces recaptured the city of Akerabat from terrorists. Town considered to be a geographical center of the country and one of the most difficult regions to carry out combat missions. The province of Hama, in which Akerabat is located, has become the second most difficult test for Syrian and Russian military forces. The first and hardest test was passed during the liberation of Aleppo, which was captured by militants and kept under their control for several years. Dense development was one of the biggest obstacles in the liberation of the northern capital of Syria and required extreme carefulness and precision. Solving the Akerabat problem made it possible to secure gas and oil fields of Palmyra, one of the large central treasures of Syria, and Aleppo, Kenessar, Itria, Salamiya, Hama highway, connecting the central part of the country with its remote areas. Hama is becoming a real test ground for militants. Here, for the first time since 2015, killer drones attacked the government army. An equally important task for the government army was breaking off two large groups of terrorists, in which the Akerabat part of the terrorists inevitably will be surrounded. The key role in the liberation of Akerabat was assigned not only to Syrian Tigers under the command of Saleh al-Hassan, but also to other special forces, the Syrian Republican Guard of Issam Zahedin, as well as Russian Aerospace Forces. Russian aviation worked in close contact with soldiers of the Spec Ops, a unique unit subordinate only to current top military leadership. From the point of view of the combat mission, the operation to liberate Akerabat by the special forces with the help from Russian Aerospace Forces was quite an ordinary task. But the militants who imposed slavery and forced local population work for the benefit of the state with black flag showed fear resistance. The military was opposed by well-trained terrorists who arrived in Syria from Raqqa, Mosul and some other Iraqi cities, where they sold tons of heavy weapons, including tanks and missile systems. In the early morning on August 16, 2017, intelligence has spotted terrorists in one of that area, and a Special Operation Forces combat group was forced to move there. Usual tasks of the Special Forces of the Ministry of Defense include observation and precise target designation. However, shortly after arriving the Russian Special Forces and a few soldiers of the government army, terrorists launched ground defense. The Special Forces officers who studied this battle after declassification of all the data and all circumstances came to the conclusion that Russian Special Forces had almost no chance of repelling the attack. The commander of a Special Forces Company of Military Intelligence, Reserve Captain Vladimir Prudnikov, explained that a small fire group indicated from ambush, but it's extremely difficult to defend with the numbers they had. Tactics are always based on the circumstances, but in this case, enemy had numbers. There were almost 10 times more militants than special forces. It's extremely difficult to crush such attack with small forces. It was possible to disperse the enemy and block him from taking the height at which the special forces were entrenched. It all became possible only thanks to excellent physical and combat training of Russian soldiers. In the first few seconds that wall of fire was going on the Russian Special Forces and the Syrian military, the government troops of the Tsar were suppressed by fire and decided to withdraw. Realizing the severity of the situation, Russian Special Forces, without proper knowledge of the combat situation, entered the battle. The entire combat group, including the commander and the deputy, was seriously injured in the first few minutes of the battle. The only one who survived and could act was Corporal Danielius Karkozas, one of the most experienced soldiers of the Russian Special Operation Forces combat group, despite his young age, 28, the command of the combat group. As former Special Forces officers said, even an experienced soldier had almost no chance for a successful outcome of the battle. Deputy Commander of the Reconnaissance Company, Senior Lieutenant of the Reserve Andriy Lazachev, noted that the corporal from the MTR had 1 in a million chance to survive. Corporal Partnigin made the best decision in that situation. This is usually called perimeter defense. He took a machinery gun and began methodically work on the enemy. As a result, he cut off the first wave of attackers. After that, he had a little time to help the wounded and report on what had just happened. But the miracles, as you know, are rare, especially in the battle. After some time, militants reached Portnigan. One bullet hit the helmet, the second flew exactly into the machine gun, from which the corporal fired back to the terrorists. The situation threatened sudden death, not only for Portnigan, but for the entire group, as only grenades remained. Mathematical chance of Portnigan to repeat the fate of the senior lieutenant of CCO Alexander Prokorenko, who died a year before the Battle of Akerabat took place, was extremely high. It is tough to say what exactly motivated Jens Portningen to prepare to grenade himself, but his unwillingness to surrender the enemy is called logical and balanced by all commandos. Well, let's just say there have been operations when each soldier carried a grenade with him. If the situation is hopeless, you can always blow yourself up and take some militants. Actually, the story of Mayor Roman Filipov, who blew himself up after his plane was shot down and his wound was stranded on the ground, confirms that it's best to destroy yourself than surrender to the enemy. Special Forces officers unanimously affirm Jens Portningen acted not only competently, but also extremely coolly, strictly according to the rules of combat training. As a result, competent and confident combat work, he was able to do the main thing, to gain some priceless time. An hour later, an artillery shell landed between the wounded Special Forces, who held grenades in case an enemy appeared, and the militants. As it turned out later, raid was summoned by Portningen himself, who understood the chances of 1 person against 40. In a short time between the shelling of positions, another Special Forces group with heavy weapons and 2 armed personnel carriers approached the battlefield. The militants were pinned to the ground with large calibers, and the evacuation of wounded comrades of the Portningen group began. 10 minutes later, 2 Su-25 fighter jets that were on duty neighboring sky appeared off the place of the mass camp. Realizing the futility of the struggle and shuddering under the blows of reinforcements, terrorists abandoned wounded and killed and fled from the combat zone. None of the combat group, including Portningen himself, died that day. Clearing of battlefield showed that Jens Portningen alone ground 3 waves of attackers, and eliminated 4 terrorists. For a unique battle on December 28 of the same year, Corporal Portningen was awarded Gold Star Medal and title Hero of Russia. The awarding of the hero was personally conducted by President of Russian Federation Vladimir Putin, who was informed about all circumstances of the hardest battle. But the Star of the Hero and appreciation among colleagues is not the only thing Portningen received. 2 days later, on August 18, 2017, Syrian army with the support of Russian Aerospace Forces encircled militants near the city of Akerabat. Secure strategic height made possible to close the ring, and the Akerabat group of militants as planned ended up besieged. By the beginning of September 2017, Akerabat Pod, or as military calls it, Akerabat Pocket, was completely cleared off militants. A significant part of Syria, where hundreds of thousands of civilians live, was now completely freed from terrorists. Although the operation to free Akerabat is called the ordinary operation of this war, its real importance and value is much higher than it was commonly believed. According to open sources, Portningen continued to serve the Special Operation Forces to this day. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell.